So a few days ago I stumbled upon a RAID WW2 beta that was sitting inside my Steam library and decided to give it a go. RAID is a 4-player World War II co-op shooter developed by Lion Game Lion, the developers behind the Payday 2 bomb and casino heist, and published by Starbreeze Studios, which published the Payday franchise. Taking what they learned from the Payday games, Lion Game Lion has attempted to take the feeling and gameplay of the franchise and port it over to a World War II setting. The Secret Service has recruited you and 3 other misfits to become the drastic measures that the Allies need to win the war. You set out on missions to take out crucial Axis infrastructure while cracking jokes and looting valuables along the way. For a company that isn't just trying to copy the Payday format but actually has experience developing the series, creating a co-op shooter that identifies what made those games fun to play and putting those attributes in a new setting should be easy. However, this game fails to do so on a fundamental level. Now I know people are going to come out and dismiss whatever I have to say with, but this is a beta, and that's true. Technically this game isn't even out yet, and it's obvious that there's going to be things missing from it that will be in the full game, but this game comes out in less than 2 weeks. I can see where a couple minor issues might be fixed and where some stuff might be excluded from the beta to make it essentially a demo. However, the core of the game is already there, and it would take a lot more than 2 weeks to fix some of the issues I have with this game. Before we get into the things I think this game did wrong, let's talk about the things I think it did right. First of all, I really like the concept of this game. I had a lot of fun playing the Payday games, but I don't think I could play another sequel of it. I think the direction they've taken the series has run its course, and there's not a lot of room in their current setting and structure for them to take it anywhere interesting. Even though RAID is supposed to be its own franchise developed by a different studio, I appreciate that they're trying to take the Payday concept and apply it to a different purpose and time period. RAID isn't just another bank robbery and heist game, but more of a covert ops game. I also like the game doesn't take itself too seriously. There's so many first-person shooters that try to be these gruesome, serious military simulations, and the tone has gotten pretty stale over the years. In RAID, they replaced the serious special ops characters with a bunch of delinquents that joke and play off each other to create a more relaxed environment. I think this setting likely developed from Lion's Payday experience because a lot of the humor is essentially the same, but I appreciate it. Really, this game feels more like Inglourious Bastards the game.
You couldn't have skipped the bratwurst, you heavy fuck.
However, despite its exciting premise, RAID has some issues. The bulk of these problems pertain to the core gameplay of the game. If you look at the Payday missions, they have a clear design. The maps fit the functions of the missions and will create natural attack routes and defensive positions that suit the objectives. Attack areas have more one-dimensional cover and linear paths through them, while defensive positions will have more controlled access into them and plenty of cover. The difference between these areas are subtle, but strong enough to organically push players into these roles when needed. It's not really a set of clear distinctions, but more of a general feeling that lets you know you're in the right place. RAID's maps feel more like a mix between Call of Duty maps that you would chew through or just mazes with enemies running at you. The way they're designed, along with the AI system that we'll talk about in a minute, just makes you feel out of place. You have to fight in all directions to get anything done. It feels more like playing Pac-Man than completing a structured heist or raid. This issue is compounded by the AI system that this game has. When you play through a Payday mission, or really any mission in any shooter, there's a clear ebb and flow to the gameplay. Every strong attack is followed by a short break that allows you to catch your breath and regroup. Payday capitalizes on their wave system in order to make the games feel a lot more tactical than a typical shooter. Instead of constantly fighting to do absolutely everything, the game rewards players that hunker down and defend against an attack, then regroup and start working on objectives before the next one starts. The waves are also designed in such a way that you can usually start a task during the downtime, but you always end up facing opposition before it's over. This minor feature is what keeps Payday from devolving into a bullet hell. RAID in a sense has some downtime, but it doesn't really feel structured or prominent. I've noticed that there has been times where I wasn't getting shot at, but the majority of the game feels like Nazi zombies minus the zombies. The AI spawns too many enemies at a time in too many different places, and it ends up being a seemingly endless horde of Nazis running at you. To make it worse, it seems like there's too many enemies and not enough places to go because it's extremely common to see them stack up on each other. I ended up in a farming match the other night, and we pushed them back enough that we could clearly see that they were all spawning in a single file line, pausing, and then they all start moving in a single direction, which makes it extremely easy to mow 4 to 6 enemies down in one go if you get close enough to their spawn system, even when you're just playing the objective. In the past couple updates, however, I've noticed that the system has been improving a little bit, but it just doesn't really have that smoothness that games like Payday have. These two features work together to create an experience that is annoying to play at times. You have hordes of enemies shooting at you as you try to complete tasks and stay alive, and it's often hard to find adequate cover because of the number of enemies enemies and number of directions that they come from. I can't really say the gameplay is broken, but it just personally feels off. Feeling that you're in the right place and doing the right thing at the right time is mostly lost in this game, which makes you constantly feel vulnerable and makes the maps feel cramped. Also, the missions really don't feel well fleshed out. I was hoping to see a little more complexity and variation to the missions, but they end up being very simplistic. Trainwreck is just plant some C4 and raid the train once it derails, while fighting a bunch of enemies as you try to get around the bridge. Hunters just makes you pick off a bunch of people with the minor option of stealth. Tiger Trap is a super simple search and destroy mission. I really don't like these missions because they have been boiled down to a handful of steps with no variation or nuance to them. Payday's bank robberies were pretty simple, but at least they had things like cameras, guards, hostages, and other smaller elements to look out for. Trainwreck is pretty similar in vein to a bank robbery, but it just feels so hollow in comparison. I know that World War II had primitive technology compared to today, but it would be at least cool to have something more than endless swarms of enemies running at you. The game needs more mechanics that you have to acknowledge to get through, like maybe watchmen controlling spotlights or alarms that they can sound if they see you. In the current state, the raids feel like stripped down Call of Duty missions more than anything. Realistically, the only mission I would define as an actual mission would be Odin's Fall, but it's still a little lackluster for me to consider it good. The other thing I don't really like is the whole base camp mechanic. I get that it's supposed to be an expansion on the lobby menu, but it really just doesn't work. If you want to customize your weapon, you walk to one place. If you want to choose your proficiencies, you walk to another. Changing your character requires walking across the room. Selecting and joining missions are split between two separate parts of the room. The downside of this is that you end up in menus anyway, so basically they take the concept of navigating a menu and turn it into a new system that is less intuitive and takes longer. I could see their mechanic working if you somehow interacted with the benches, like you could look up at the map above the bench and you and your teammates could have pointers that would let you vote on missions or something, or your player would set the weapon down on the bench and actually work on it. But making a system that breaks apart a menu and scatters it around the room is just kind of dumb. Plus the fact that everyone gathers in a square to say that they're ready, to go into a menu where they click a button to say that they're ready is just redundant. I really don't understand why games like to push everybody into hubs, but it really doesn't ever add anything to those games. The last concern I have is the graphics. I don't like criticizing games for bad graphics because they don't necessarily mean the game is bad, but RAID looks like it came out in 2010. I would understand this game if it was made by a small indie studio or it was done on an extremely small budget, but Starbreeze pumped $8 million into this game and it sure as fuck doesn't look like it. The textures look really flat and dated, and I'm pretty sure there's only one or two enemy models that they put different outfits on to give them different roles. Most games do this, but they usually have a handful of variants that they switch between to keep squads from looking like exact clones. Even though these downfalls make the game look dated, it did give me the ability to max out my game on my older computer, which I appreciate. I don't know if they're aiming for the low spec system or they just decided to cheap out on graphics though. If it's the former, I wish that there was something that they could have done to give the higher systems more of a purpose. Overall, I think RAID realistically has a 30-70 chance of making a hit. I was going to give it a lot better chance, but as I keep playing, I just get less interested in the game. Really, there's no game mechanic or feature that really stands out and sets RAID apart from the rest of the shooter genre. The core game is just a soulless rehash of an already popular idea. There's a chance that the developers are intentionally holding features back, but given that the game comes out in less than 2 weeks, that's not very likely. Still, I'll probably pick it up to do a formal review of the game, so watch out for that.